Now, one private school that's done something like this is School of Humanity, and its founder now joins us in the studio, Raya Bidshahri. Raya, thanks for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Raya, tell us a little bit of background. School of Humanity, it's not your sort of typical private school here in the UAE. You're doing things with a bit of a difference. Tell us in a quick nutshell what you do.
Yeah, so School of Humanity is an American online school. We're accredited out of the US, and we learn by doing. We learn by having a positive impact on the world. So our school offers an entirely project-based and interdisciplinary curriculum, and we serve families around the world who are possibly frustrated with traditional schools and are looking for accredited alternatives. Till date, we've enrolled learners in over 30 countries across 6 continents, and we put a significant emphasis on aligning our curriculum to the trends and challenges of our world.
Now, something we're talking about is teaching AI and what that looks like. And what are some of the conversations that you and your educators that you work with have been having around this, about how you approach this subject when it's still so new to so many people?
The lens that we first started approaching it through is actually ethics and understanding the social implications and environmental implications of artificial intelligence. And it actually stemmed out of conversations with our students, our learners. What we saw was as soon as ChatGPT started being rolled out, there was even more interest from our learners to actually understand how this is going to impact their lives. And it was from that inspiration that we created our year-long ethical technology or ethical artificial intelligence challenge.
So tell us about this course, AI and Ethics. What is the challenge about, and what does this course entail? What are you teaching, and how are the kids learning? What do they have to do?
So some important context about our school is we follow a challenge-based learning methodology for education. So we set our courses around challenges our learners engage, investigate, and act on these challenges. So in grades 11 and 12 from this academic year, our learners will have the option of taking the ethical technology challenge. In this challenge, where we put a significant emphasis on AI, we also touch on quantum computing, biotech, and other emerging technologies. Learners will have the opportunity to look at case studies of how these technologies are impacting society, the potential risks as well as the potential benefits, and then they go on to do their own projects, whether it's investigations, creative projects, dissertations, going deeper into the dimensions of this challenge. And so that's the way that it's structured.
Now, you believe that all technologies carry values. We've talked about this before. Can you give us a simple example of how that shows up in AI tools that your students are already using, or maybe some case studies that you intend to share with your students?
So technology doesn't exist in a vacuum, neither does artificial intelligence. It's the way that it behaves, the recommendations it makes is largely shaped by the humans that created it, by the logic of its algorithms, as well as the data that it's trained on. So it's absolutely crucial that learners understand this and understand the impact it can have on it. And so one of the case studies that we introduced to our learners is the Institute of Humane Technology. It is a movement and institute stemming out of California that seeks to move the development of technology away from this profits mindset, extractive attention economy mindset, towards embedding more humane values that contribute to the flourishing of society into those technologies. So we look at examples of where maybe we fail to do so, and the large social media companies are a good example of that, and then examples of movements where we're attempting to make the machines that we create more moral and ethical.
You know, you talked about teaching kids about ethics, which seems like a great place to start. But, something else that we're seeing right now is this kind of superstar level of trading between tech companies that seems to be happening, trying to attract the best, the brightest in AI talent, the elite few that somehow are the movers and shakers in this world. There's also a sense, maybe from parents, maybe from students, a desire to learn how to build AI from the ground up as well, to be in that elite few of sort of really valued professionals. Have you started to think about that as well, about in terms of teaching them the technology side of it and how you're going to approach that?
Absolutely. We do offer courses in partnership with Code Academy around machine learning, building bots, large language models, data analysis, all the fundamentals that you need in order to start programming artificial intelligence. But I think it's a big mistake if education around AI ends up focusing mainly on the technology side of it and not on the humanities side of it. I'm a big advocate of interdisciplinary education, breaking the silos down between subjects and teaching the connections between subjects. And we saw what happens when the tech CEOs don't understand sociology, psychology, politics, right? And it's been said that the future leaders of our world, or the future leaders of these big tech companies, need to also have those humanities perspectives. So I'm a big advocate of bringing both of those two things together.
Now, there's one big worry is bias, that algorithms might reinforce stereotypes or unfairness. I see it on my For You page on TikTok, for example. But how do you teach young people to recognize and challenge those biases within that course that you're teaching?
Well, it starts by understanding how large language models like ChatGPT work. It's important that young people understand that these algorithms are not thinking. They're not actually reasoning, they're predicting. They're predicting what the next word after each sentence should be. And the way they predict this is by analyzing large amounts of data and learning from that data and then making that prediction. So then when you understand this, you're then inspired to ask, or you guide young people to ask, where does this data come from? Who trains it? And what biases might this data carry? It's also helpful to look at previous mistakes that have already been made in case studies. So Amazon is a good example of this. They had released a recruitment tool powered by AI that they actually had to scrap very quickly because it was discovered that this AI recruitment tool was biased against women. And if it was analyzing resumes, and if it had anything relating to female, like women's chess club or something on the resume, it would had a bias against it. Wow. And so they had to scrap this tool. So there's plenty of case studies like this that we can start to learn from and ensure that we're preventing these things from happening in future models.
Another important aspect is sort of teaching them how to use it and stay safe themselves. There's issues of privacy and surveillance. Even Sam Altman had warned that, listen, whatever you're in your ChatGPT histories, if the courts want access to that, we legally have to give it to them. So there's things like that. We're also seeing areas like ChatGPT psychosis, AI psychosis that's come around. There's a lot of sort of risks and dangers to just being a user now that people are starting to become more aware of. Is that something that you focus on as well?
Absolutely. One of the books on the recommended list for our learners this year who are taking on this challenge that I also recommend to the audience is a book called Careless People by Sarah Wynne Williams. She's a Facebook whistleblower. And it's a fascinating insight into how the way that these big tech companies and social media giants process our data can lead to incredible consequences on society, consequences on an entire nation when misinformation is spread across these networks. And so it's really important to understand that. We also have a module in the challenge that focuses on regulations and understanding how different countries around the world are going to be regulating the use of AI, the use of the data behind AI. You have the GDPR case study, but then China is doing it differently. UAE would be tackling it differently. And so understanding these different regulations is also another lens through which we can understand where the boundaries of the ethics lie.
And there's a lot of talk, you mentioned earlier, about the attention economy, screen time affecting kids' mental health. This isn't the first time we've mentioned it on the show, but how does your ethics course address those everyday realities? You teach your learners this course, but when they go back home, they'll be scrolling away on TikTok. So how do we address these everyday realities?
Yeah, I'm terrified for all of us to think about how AI embedded in social media platforms is going to make us even more addicted to them. I think I saw in recent news that Meta has acquired a startup that's known for being able to detect emotions and voices really well. And so you can use your imagination to think about what they would be using that for. And so I think this is a great example of where that interdisciplinary perspective is really helpful to equip into the course. So understanding the psychology of addiction, understanding user experience design, and how the design of platforms is set up in a way to get you to engage with it a certain way. Understanding how echo chambers form, or sociology perspective of how we all have our version of the truth on social media. Like, these are the lenses through which we need to tackle social media addiction. Not telling learners it's bad for you, but actually helping them understand the psychology, sociology, technology, business model behind it so they can start to think critically about their own social media use.
Right, just a final one for you, and not necessarily on AI. I'm just intrigued really about what you do at School of Humanity. We've talked about it before on this show, but how do you attract students to an unconventional learning system when so many parents and families sort of have bought into a traditional system, think that's the route to success? Who are you mentioned 140 or so students that are with you at School of Humanity. How do you attract them to your system when it's new? It's sort of untested in maybe their eyes.
Yeah, so one of the things I always tell my team is we're not in the business of convincing families. The families who are already frustrated and looking for alternatives tend to come to us.
Right.
And so that's the kind of perspective we adopt. And a few interesting stats around this. In the US, homeschooling is now the fastest growing form of education. According to the Washington Post report, it's outpacing private and public schools. And you're seeing similar trends in most major global economies, including UK, Canada, Australia. Here in the UAE, we're seeing anecdotally lots of homeschoolers are coming to us. And so we're seeing a movement where there is a segment of families who want to learn differently and are looking for alternatives. And they might be change makers, they might be athletes, they might be learners with special learning differences, but they all share this common philosophy of wanting to learn by doing rather than memorizing for exams. And that's why they come to us.
Well, it's really interesting stuff. Yeah. Thanks for coming into the studio today.
Thank you for having me. And thanks for having this discussion.
That's a voice there of Raya Bidshahri, who is founder of School of Humanity.